What's up, man?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Not too bad. So, I'm just wondering, you're a leftist, and these views that you have, are you also you didn't bring up you did bring up Medicare for all. Okay, I'm just wondering how you would plan to fund that Medicare for all.
So, like most things, I think it would be funded through taxation, and then whatever isn't picked up by taxation through deficit spending.
Okay, well, you know, why not just hand that responsibility down to the states so that I think that a state government could control healthcare better than the federal government.
Could you elaborate why you think that? Because don't get me wrong, I know that there was a push in California for a little bit to implement some sort of single payer system. If a state did that, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I think that it's something that should be available to all people. So that's why I think it should be done at the federal level.
Okay. Well, I'm not. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm right wing. I voted for Trump. I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm generally not a Republican. I'm just a right winger. But one of the things I disagree with when it comes to the Republicans is healthcare, because I don't believe that healthcare should be fully privatized. Now, I believe that there should be a public and private option, but I don't think that the government should be in charge of that option, because generally, when the government is involved with anything, it kind of turns to hell. So the government really does not do well when it comes to providing basic necessity of life for people, which is why the state government, who knows their people better than the federal government, would be better at a system of healthcare.
So I definitely want to push back on that because two of the most successful government programs that we've had are Medicaid and Medicare. And Medicare specifically is arguably more efficient than private health insurance. Every dollar that is spent in Medicare, a higher percentage of those dollars go to actual care versus private health insurance, where a higher percentage of those dollars go to administrative costs. And so, which you can make the case that Medicare is more efficient as a result. And then, so I guess I don't disagree that if a state government did it, I would be fine with that. But I think that they might run into some issues with funding and things like that. And I just think it would be more overall successful at the federal government because I think it's important that just because the people in Nevada get it, for example, if Nevada implements it, I think that everybody should have access to free healthcare.
Do you think that people should be forced to be put on the healthcare system?
I think that I think it should apply to everyone. Yeah.
Why do you think that?
I mean, just like I think that there should be public roads and that everybody should be able to drive on those roads. I think that
Okay.
if
Well,
someone wanted to buy, I guess, a private supplemental insurance. So, for example, in places like Denmark, they'll have something like that, where your healthcare costs are covered, but if you want but then you get hit by a car, for example, and so your cost of like your medical expenses are covered, but you buy like additional insurance on top of that, where you'll just get like extra money, for your pain and suffering. I have no inherent problem with that, and so like if people wanted to do that, I don't think that's a problem. But your base healthcare, I think that should just be covered.
okay. I think that we tend to have some middle ground on the state government. I don't believe in a national healthcare system. I think that doesn't work. But I wanted to ask you your question. What do you think about Social Security?
Oh, Social Security is incredibly effective.
Well, so here's the thing. Now, Social Security is put in place. It was never put in place to be around this long. It was put in place by FDR during World War II before World War II because of the Great Depression, and it was kind of put as a safety net so people would have that, but not exactly would make them reliant on Social Security. So here's the thing.
Well,
Now,
I want to push back on that a little bit and to go into like why we originally developed Social Security. So prior to Social Security, roughly 20% of seniors lived in abject poverty. And so we had a really big problem in this country with people getting to retirement age and just not having the saving and they were living in poverty as a result. And so
okay,
that's why we developed the Social Security system.
all right. So here's the thing. All right, the government is not here to provide everything for their citizens, in my opinion, and I think that individual responsibility. I think that individual responsibility. In a second, I'm gonna wait for you to come back, then I'll finish my point.
Hold on. Sorry. I
Oh, can
think
you hear
it's
me?
cut out for a second. I apologize.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I'll repeat it. So here's the thing. I think that, for example, I work as a teller at a bank, right?
Okay.
And a portion of my paycheck will go to Social Security automatically, just as anyone else's paycheck in the United States. Now, I believe that it should be my personal right to opt out of Social Security, and instead of paying that 6% of my income tax to Social Security, I would personally choose to invest that in the stock market. And the returns in the stock market generally, at least in the stock like in the S&P 500, the overall market, Okay, generally over the past 100 years, it's shown a return of about 8 to 10% every single year for the past 100 years. It survived the Great Depression. It survived World War II. It survived 9/11. It survived Iraq and Afghanistan. The stock market, I'm not saying everyone has to go that way,
Well, and
but
so
what I'm saying
I, I,
is that
I want to
people,
point out the problem with that then is because yes, there are some people that will save and they'll put their money in the stock market. A new study came out recently that the top 10% of wealthiest Americans own 89% of all stocks. And so more and more, this is a record number. So more and more the stock market is something that the wealthy are participating in. I think only 56% of Americans own any stock at all. Um, but so beyond that,
well,
we had a privatized saving system. That was what it was prior to Social Security. And it was very unsuccessful for the country. 20% of seniors lived in abject poverty. And we can look at today how many seniors depend on Social Security for almost 100 to like 80% of their income. It's a very large percentage of seniors. And so while there are, individuals that may effectively be able to save, I don't think that's an effective, just leaving it to the private sector is effective for the country as a whole.
no, but what I'm generally saying is, let's say that you decide that you want to opt into Social Security, and that when you turn 62 years old, or whatever the age is, I believe it's 62 when you can start collecting, that you receive what you put into the system. Okay. There's been studies done to show that you're not actually receiving the amount of money that you put in. You're receiving a lot less than what you put in. Secondly, why should your right to opt into Social Security trump my right to not want to be part of Social
Well,
Security? Why can't,
oh, sorry.
wait one second. I don't know. I want to finish the point. So if I want to do with that 6% of my paycheck whatever I want to do, why should I be forced to invest in a government system when I believe I can make more money investing in my own case, the stock market? Some people can choose to take that 6% and use it as cash, put it under their pillow for a rainy day. Some people can choose to invest in gold. Some people can choose to invest in whatever they want. If I want my own money and I worked hard for that money. If I want to choose to put that 6% every single time I get a paycheck into something that I want, why should I be forced to invest in a government system when there's no absolute guarantee that it's going to be there when I'm 62? Because there are
Well,
studies
so
done that social
can I respond to
security.
that point?
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah. So I think that as a member of society, I think that this is, I mean, because what you're saying could apply to literally any tax. You're saying, why should I have to pay taxes, basically? And I think that as a member of society, you are responsible to paying your taxes. And now you can say, have a problem with Social Security, maybe the mechanisms. Frankly, I don't like the way that Social Security is currently funded, the way that we have it done through payroll taxes. I don't think that that's how it should operate. But that's how it currently operates. And I think that we should change it so that it's more, I guess there aren't all these worries about people are worried about it going insolvent. Frankly, I don't think that those worries are founded in much of the actual data. But that's kind of, I think that as a member of society, I think that you are able to function in the society. I think that you benefit from the infrastructure created by society. And so from there, I think you're responsible to pay your taxes.
Okay, but at what point does someone have to take care of themselves and say, I'm making this much money. This portion of my money should go into savings.
You
If
can
you're not
save as
smart,
much as you want that's not going to Social Security. You can put the rest of that into the stock market. But I think that a
you
portion of your income is going to go to taxation. It's going to be taxed. And that money we're going to use to fund social programs. And one of those things is Social Security.
but why should Social Security be enforced? Because a retirement fund is not as important as, for example, a healthcare system, right? So
Well,
healthcare
retirement
people,
is very important. And that's what I'm saying.
I'm
So
not saying,
without Social Security, we would go back to that system where 20% of Americans, potentially more, but that's what it was prior to Social Security. 20% of seniors lived in abject poverty. It was a disaster system.
okay, I'm not saying that a retirement fund is not important. What I'm saying is that I should have the choice to take that money, because let's just say this. Let's say that you choose to invest in Social Security, and by the time you're 62, you get your Social Security check. And I chose not to invest in Social Security, so by the time I'm 62, I don't get that check.
Frankly, I
But
don't think it's a helpful way of looking at Social Security. I know that that's the way that it's often framed. It's like this, I guess, enforced saving mechanisms, but that's really not the way that it's working. You're paying into Social Security so that seniors today are able to collect the benefits. It's a form of redistribution. You know what I mean? It's not really like
okay,
saving. I know that that's the way that like it's often framed, but that's why. And frankly, I'd like to see it expanded. I'd like to move towards a more universal basic income. I think that everybody should be receiving benefits. Like a Social Security for all type system.
but the thing is that, again, I believe that the individual liberty of one person is more important than the collective.
I mean, so
That's
but do
that's
you
why.
think that you shouldn't have to pay for public schools?
Sorry, could I just finish the point for a sec? What I'm saying is that in America, we were founded on individual liberty and accountability. Okay, if you cannot save money, that is your fault. It is not the fault. It is not the point of the government to be your babysitter. You need to save money. You need to own up to your decisions. You need to say, I make this much money, I'm going to save this much money. And if you don't do that, tough luck. Because not but after you turn 18 or even before you turn 18, you cannot have your hand held every step of the way. You ought to take care of yourself. You need to have personal responsibility, and that revolves around Social Security. If you want to invest in Social Security, that is your prerogative.
But I think that what you're saying is you're saying a lot of things I think are just functionally not true. The government is designed to benefit the citizens. The government is meant to work for the people. That's what it's supposed to do. And now I think that the founders, I don't think it's frankly a very good argument to point to like how the founders wanted the government to run, because there were a whole lot of problems with the way that the founders wanted it to run. They wanted to be very insulated from the people, for example. They didn't want people directly being able to vote on things like senators. I think that was a lot of problems. Things that like we would all agree on today with what the founders thought were good, without even talking about the things like who they thought should have rights and whatnot, just functional ways that they thought the government should run, we would all disagree with today. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the best argument. And I think that I personally am very against this mentality of where you shouldn't care about the people next to you. You shouldn't care about the person that lives 3 doors down. I think that's a horrible way of looking at the world. I think you should care about those people. And I think that programs like Social Security, which allow giant swaths of the population to avoid giant poverty, I think are very good things.
Wait, so hang on. Let me just ask you a question. If everyone took care of themselves, then there would be no need for someone to take care of another person.
But see, this is what I'm saying. This idea of I should only care about myself. This is a terrible way of looking at the world.
I'm not saying you should only care about yourself. What I'm saying is that individual responsibility is what's most important in a liberty-based society.
For a society to thrive, you have to care about the people around you. It's so important.
Okay. Well, now let's bring up another point. That what if Social Security runs out of money?
I don't think it will run out of money though. I think if we change nothing about Social Security, it will still pay out, I believe it's over 3/4 of benefits until, I think 2025, 2030 or something like that. But if we don't have to, we could just fund it like we do other government programs, like for example, the military. The military is not funded in the same way Social Security is funded. We could just change Social Security to be funded in that way. And there would never be these questions of whether or not it's insolvent. We've never, like, the only thing that's guaranteed to be paid out to any degree up to, 5 years from now is Social Security and Medicare. So other government programs, like the military, like other federal programs, aren't funded up to that degree.
Can I just say something quickly it's kind of off topic? Everyone keeps sending me these things. I'm very new to live, so I don't really know what these things mean. But I appreciate you guys sending me all these things. I don't know what it is, but I just want to take a moment to thank everyone. But look, I'm not saying that people should not care about one another. Okay, I think that generally it's a good thing to care about other people. It's a good thing to have a moral compass and take care of your family and your neighbors and whatever. But it is not the responsibility of yourself to take care of someone else who made bad decisions in their life.
But I think that if you want to be a part of the society and benefit from all the things that society has to offer, then yeah, I do think it's your responsibility to chip in through taxation.
You do by paying taxes.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about here, is by paying taxes. That Social Security is a tax.
No. Taxes and Social Security is a whole different concept. It's a whole different ballgame.
It's a payroll tax. It's a tax.
Yes, but there's certain taxes that you pay for that you need. For example, we need to have a military to protect our country. We need some sort of Medicare to protect people who can't afford healthcare. We don't need a system that tells you to pay into a system so you can get it back later.
But that's what I'm saying. That's a fundamentally flawed way of looking at Social Security, I think, because that's not how it works. You're paying into the system so that people today, seniors today, can be able to not live in poverty.
Well, if they can make those decisions to not be in poverty if they just made better decisions.
But if you support the idea of having a Medicare system, I mean, that's literally the same thing, so that seniors have access to healthcare.
It's not, because I'm not forcing people to be on the government platform. I think that healthcare should be up to the states, not up to the federal government.
Well, but Medicare is a federal program.
Yeah, and I don't think it generally works.
But wait, how would you say that it doesn't work well? I mean, we already got into the fact that it's more efficient than private health insurance. What about it do you think doesn't work very well?
Well, I think that, for example, not being able to choose your own doctors, I think that the vast lines, it can take up to months to receive a visit to the doctor. I think that it's a burden on the taxpayer in general, and I think that any big system run by the government doesn't work, which is why it should be left up to the
But
states.
so,
You
I
know,
mean, we've seen the
we have
number of, but I think that it's really easy to say things like, oh, government run programs don't work. But then when we point to actual things like the number of seniors that were uninsured prior to Medicare, the number of seniors that lived in poverty prior to Social Security, astronomical compared to what they are today. And so I think that it's really easy to say, oh, government programs don't work because that's a common talking point and nobody really critiques it because Reagan went around saying, oh, the government never does anything good. But when we look at these programs are actually incredibly successful at what they're intended to do.
in what regard are they successful?
They're both cost
There's
efficient.
been
So when you have, so you're saying in what regard are they successful? So when savings were left to the private sector, that's what it was prior to Social Security. A fifth of the people at retirement age were living in poverty. That is unsuccessful compared to today, where that's not the case.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that there's been multiple studies done that has shown that you do not receive the amount of money you put into the Social Security system when you turn
That's not
60.
how it works, though. You're paying into it today
It
for
is
seniors that are around today. I understand how
no,
that's the
I understand.
framing that's often used to make it look like, oh, it's a public savings plan, but like that's just functionally not how the system works.
No, well, the way I understand what you're saying, that I pay into the system so someone old can receive those benefits. I understand that. But what I'm saying is that if I pay into that system, I should get what I pay into the system. I shouldn't get any less.
I disagree because if Jeff Bezos, I think Jeff Bezos should be taxed very, very much. And I think that just because he's taxed $100 billion, and I guess that's how much he's worth. If he's
So,
taxed several $1 billion, I don't think that he necessarily needs to receive those benefits because I mean that's part of wealth redistribution. I don't think that it necessarily needs to be this one-to-one thing because a lot of these social programs are about lessening things like wealth inequality.
but this country was not founded on the premise that we should distribute wealth.
That's a terrible argument, though, to point to some of the founding things that the founders believed, some of the ways that the founders wanted to run the government. It was horrible. I mean, you could say it's a cliche at this point because there were so many flaws with the way that the founders wanted things to run. But I don't think that saying, oh, the founders didn't want this to happen, it's a pretty bad argument. I mean, they didn't think that everybody should have rights. So saying that,
Who is the government to tell me that I need to redistribute my wealth?
well, so I think it's this government that now that we've made things more democratic, and I think that we should make them even more democratic than they currently are. I think that the government should be more representative of the people. And so from there, I think the government then represents the people. And then that's how we can help determine how society should function.
Sorry, you didn't answer my question. I'm asking you, who is the
The
government to tell
people.
me that I distribute
The
my
government
wealth?
is the people. The government is the society that you live in.
The government is the
The
people?
people. It's the ideal for me is that it should be as representative of the people as possible. Now the founders didn't want it that way. But that's what I think the government should be.
The government is the people sounds very authoritarian in my mind. The government is
Well,
not the
that's why
people.
we
The
want
people.
it to be more representative. I think that there are problems with the way that the government currently functions, but that's why we should do that.
Okay, and all right, fair enough. We're not going to agree on this topic. Again, I do believe that individual liberty is more important than collective liberties as a society, but it's okay. Now
Now,
you're
I do
saying
want to say though, I think that pointing to the founders is bizarre to me when we're talking about liberty.
why is that?
I mean, the founders didn't believe that large swaths of the population should have access to the same liberties that they did.
You're talking about slavery, for
Sure.
example.
Or just women's rights, slavery, take your pick.
Okay, but as society grew, those things were taken out of society.
Exactly. So people went against what the founders wanted, which I think is good. But so I think it's bizarre to point to the founders and what the founders wanted and then say, I care about liberty.
But there's not a majority of people in this country who want a redistribution of wealth.
Actually, the vast majority of people in this country support higher taxes on the wealthy.
The wealthy are already paying astronomically high
Well,
taxes.
no, wait. Let's not change the subject, though. The first thing that you said was that people don't want redistribution of wealth. Demonstrably untrue. The vast majority of people support higher taxes on the wealthy.
I don't think generally that's true. I think that
People can go look up the polling right now. The majority of people support this.
no, the majority of people support not having big corporations avoid loopholes and avoid paying
You can look
taxes.
up the support for a wealth tax. The support for a wealth tax is above 50% internationally.
Do you have any of those statistics?
I can't do it right now because I'm on live.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. What do you think happens when you overly tax the rich?
What do you think happens? Well, I think, frankly, what define overly? That's a bit of a loaded term.
Well, I'll give you an example. Tesla just left California to
Sure,
Texas,
I think that
right?
Tesla is, I think that they have their own way of doing things, and I think they're still in the United States.
Okay, but if you increase taxes on them even more, then they would just go to a
I
different
mean, a
country.
huge reason
And
that Tesla left is because Elon Musk personally didn't like a lot of the things that California was doing regarding like COVID.
I'm sorry, what?
A big reason that Tesla left is because Elon Musk didn't like a lot of the things that California was doing regarding COVID.
Well, sure, but don't you think that he would have left if there was a wealth tax on big corporations?
If Elon Musk, for whatever reason, if we implement a federal wealth tax, and Elon Musk doesn't want to benefit from all the things that he gets from living within the U.S., I think that that's his choice. He can go to some other country. I don't think that he would. It would be incredibly more costly to move Tesla out of the United States, and I think we can both agree that.
Um, well, not maybe in the short term, not in the long term. If there was a big wealth tax put in place,
I just fundamentally disagree.
do you know how many jobs would be lost if there was a wealth tax put in place?
I don't think there would be very many jobs, and frankly, I think that we'd be able to potentially spur more economic growth with the wealth tax, with the where those social programs would be created.
So you think these big corporations would just say, "Yeah, I would love to give the government more money than I'm already giving."
So okay, so now we're moving on to like a corporate tax. We're talking about like the corporate income tax rate, because a wealth tax would apply to incredibly wealthy individuals. So you're talking about are you talking
Okay.
about the corporate tax rate, or are you talking about the wealth tax?
Well, I'm talking about both
Sure,
because you already have a corporate tax rate.
we do.
You have, in many cases, state taxes. You have federal taxes, and now you want to put another tax.
A wealth tax, yes, and I think that we should raise the corporate income tax rate.
So you think that someone making $400,000 a year should be paying 60 to 70% in taxes?
No, I don't know where you got that number from.
Okay, so how much do you think that someone making $400,000 a year
You know,
should pay?
Bernie Sanders had an excellent plan. I think I think there was a good starting point from where we're at right now. And for his plan, it was so he would add. So now we're talking about marginal income tax rate. We're not talking about wealth tax anymore. I think that this is important to make these distinctions. So Bernie Sanders' tax plan though topped off at $2 million. So every dollar above $2 million a year would be taxed at 52%. Hello,
In what way is that fair?
is it is it fair?
Just just because you're making
I
more
mean,
money,
in what way is it fair that the
I believe in a flat tax system.
So so if we're going to talk
What?
about fair though, in what way is it fair that the Waltons completely inherited their wealth and they own more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans? Is that fair?
Well, it's just their family
But
situation.
is it fair? If
Yeah,
we're
it is
going to if we're
fair,
going to use
because not everyone
the
is.
term of fair, so they did nothing to earn that money, zero. They did zero things. They are wealthier than the bottom 40% of Americans. Do you think that that's more fair
Does
than someone that's Jeff Bezos paying a 2% wealth tax? That's Elizabeth Warren's plan.
family worked hard for that money, and when they die, they can choose where that
No,
money
but we're talking
goes.
about the people who received that wealth after doing nothing.
It doesn't matter.
So, but this is strange to me though, that in one case you'll say, oh, it's unfair that like a poor person receives like some sort of welfare benefit, but then it is fair when people receive billions of dollars for doing nothing.
No, it's not that they did. It's not that they did
What did
nothing.
they do?
Their
What did the Walton kids do?
It doesn't matter what they did.
Well,
Their
no,
family.
wait, no, because you said they didn't do nothing. What did they do? Other than be born in a privileged family, what did they do?
But it doesn't matter if they were born into a privileged family. That family took the risk to create that business. It happened to be successful. Good for that
Wait,
family.
I want to hold you to this. You said they didn't do nothing. I want to know what they did.
Well, maybe they took over the business afterwards and started
No,
running
but they
it.
inherited. They inherited. What did they do to inherit that? They didn't do anything.
They were born to a family that was successful.
Exactly. And so when we're talking about fair, I think this is what would be more fair. I think that a wealth tax on those individuals would be superiorly more fair.
No, because they're already paying taxes. I mean, the top 1% is already paying, I believe, 60% of taxes
The
in this
top,
country.
a lot of people will play around with those statistics. They'll talk about like the top, if you're talking about income earners versus wealth, because we know that people like Jeff Bezos, they don't make a lot of their wealth through traditional income streams. So there's a lot of ways that people play around with those numbers. But we do know that the top, I believe it's 100 families, the top 100 wealthiest families pay a lower effective tax rate than the average American.
Okay, and that's because of tax loopholes.
Exactly, and I think we should close those loopholes.
No, and I would be open to closing tax loopholes, but raising taxes on companies and punishing them for being successful is not going to stimulate the economy. It's going to make people leave the country.
I don't view it as a punishment. I think that it's just a cost of doing business. It's part of paying into the system that's allowed this enormous amount of wealth to be created.
Okay, now let me put a scenario in your head. Let's just say that we had a flat tax system of 15%.
Let me ask you this: why flat tax rate and not a flat tax amount?
Can I let me just ask first, because I asked first, and then you can ask your question. So let's say that there was a flat tax system of 15%. All right, and obviously there would be some sort of opt out. If you make below $52,000 a year, you would not pay a federal income tax. Okay, now that 15%, if everyone paid 15%, and there was no corporate loopholes, everyone is paying 15%. Not only would that stimulate more money for the government to run these social programs that you would like, but it would allow more businesses to come in, because now people are not worried about the eventuality of raising taxes on them, or they don't know in the future, like, oh, I'm paying 15% now, but now in 10 years I'm going to be paying 30, 35%. If everyone paid 15%, okay, if everyone paid 15%, everyone would know, I'm going to work this job, I'm going to pay 15%, that's the end of it. I'm not getting out of paying taxes with some sort of loophole from anything. Then that would work, because everyone is paying their fair share.
So can I respond to the question?
Sure.
So this would be, you're sort of making a case for the Laffer Curve, this idea that if we cut taxes, we can actually increase government revenue. Now you're making the case that this should be specifically done through a flat rate. Now you're not making a case necessarily for what you think that rate should be, but it's not super important, I guess. So the Laffer Curve, this is actually done. I don't think they exactly implemented a flat tax rate, but they drastically cut taxes in Kansas. This is known, people can Google this. It's called the Kansas experiment. And they said, okay, we're going to cut taxes, but it's going to stimulate economic activity. It's going to do so much, and it's going to increase revenue going into the government because we're cutting taxes, but people are going to be doing more because of that. What happened in Kansas? Tax revenue drastically fell, and a lot of their government programs ran out of money, and their economy actually ended up going into a bit of a downturn. And so I think that there's time and time again to show that. It's almost, you're not necessarily making the case for trickle down economics, but it's a similar. It's a similar argument though. Well, if we cut taxes on the wealthy, because that's what you're saying, because you're saying that you're not saying that poor people are paying too much. You're saying that wealthy people are paying too much in taxes, and so you're saying if we cut that, it will spur economic growth, and it will, in a way, trickle down to the people at the bottom, and it will create more. That's been shown time and time again to not be just what happens. But I want to ask from there, because I let you ask your question. So why a flat tax rate opposed to a flat tax amount? Why not a flat tax amount? Wouldn't that be more fair? If everyone had to pay, whatever that amount should be, why would it be a rate? Because if you're talking about what's unfair, well, if someone's rich, they'd still be paying a higher amount than someone who's poor. Or go on.
So what you're saying is that people should be taxed based on the income they make, not just I'm sorry. I don't really understand what you're saying.
So you made the case for a flat tax rate, and you're saying that would be more fair. So I think that the reason that this doesn't make sense to me is, why wouldn't you argue for a flat tax amount, where everyone pays just the same amount of taxes? There's no rate at all. Because with a flat tax rate, you would still have wealthier people paying a higher amount in taxes. And I think the reason that nobody ever calls for a flat tax amount is because we all know that would be ridiculous, and in no way would we be able to fund how much money the government needs to operate with a flat tax amount. But if people really cared about it being fair and just everyone pays the same amount, you would be arguing for a flat tax amount, not a flat tax rate.
But that's generally the same thing, because you're paying 50% of income.
No. So like 15% of 100,000 is different than 15% of 60,000, right? We can agree that it would be a higher amount that the higher income earners would pay, and so that's why I think. Well, so are we on the same page on that though?
Okay. Well, because my argument would be that the 15% of the income tax that you pay would be enough money to get the government to have more money than they do now.
So it's not about fairness, because that seems to be what you were saying before, is that it's about making things fair. A flat tax rate would make things more fair.
Well, yeah. Generally, it would be making things more fair. It just would stimulate the economy, because you should not be taxed more because you're making more money.
But you still do think that with a flat tax rate, because someone that makes more, they are paying a higher amount in taxes.
I don't think they should be paying a
So
higher
you
amount.
think that? So you don't think it should be a flat tax rate? You think it should be a flat tax amount, where there's a specific dollar amount, and every person puts that dollar amount in.
No. I'm saying 15%. I'm saying 15% based on what they make per year, their federal income. I mean, on their income, and federally they'll pay 15% of that income.
No. But okay, I feel like we're going in circles here. So I'm saying that if your argument is things just should be fair, taxes should be fair, then your argument wouldn't be for a flat tax rate. It would be for a flat tax amount, because then everyone would truly be paying the same amount in taxes. Someone said pay attention to the road. I'm not driving. I'm just in the car.
Sure, fair. And to be fair, I wasn't understanding your point, but yeah, sure. I am saying that I would prefer not a flat tax amount, a flat tax percentage based on your income.
But why?
Why? Not everyone. Well, because not everyone would be paying the same amount, but people would be paying that 15%, and it would still, because 15% is a whole lot better than 27 or 35%.
But so it would still be progressive, though. Because unless you're arguing for a flat tax amount, you're still arguing for it to be somewhat progressive. And so I just think it should be more progressive. But
it wouldn't be.
A flat tax rate would still be progressive, because it would. I mean, it wouldn't be as progressive. It's not as progressive as I think it should be. But wealthier people would be paying a higher amount.
They would be paying a higher amount, but it would be much less than they're currently paying.
But then that's a different argument, though. You're not saying fairness anymore. You're saying, okay, I just have a different amount that I think will lead to increased tax revenue. And I think it's been shown over and over again that cutting taxes on the wealthy does not spur economic growth. A lot of times it leads to stock buybacks. We saw that Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. What did that lead to in 2018? A record number of stock buybacks, $1 trillion in stock buybacks.
No. When Trump cut taxes during his presidency, it very much did stimulate the economy.
Well, we didn't see capital expenditures rise in the way that he argued, or in the way that he said that they would, but we did see a massive increase in stock buybacks.
It doesn't. Stock buybacks don't determine whether or not tax cut works.
I'm saying, though, that that's where a large portion of the savings went to.
A large portion stocks thing.
Stock buybacks. It was a record number of stock buybacks.
But why is it a bad thing?
Frankly, stock buybacks used to be illegal because they're a form of stock price manipulation.
The economy got so high that people felt the need to sell their stock because the economy was thriving.
No. That's not what stock buybacks. So stock buybacks are a way of a company trying to artificially drive the price of their stock up, especially when a lot of top executives and maybe people on the board own shares of said stock, so they try to artificially drive the price up.
Okay. I'm not going to debate something I'm not very educated on. I don't really know much about stock buybacks, but what I do know is that I think it was by the name of Forbes. I forgot what his name was. He posted a few videos of flat tax, but he measured it about 17%. And basically, the whole argument was that the reason why the rich aren't paying their fair share is because they're not. They keep getting out of taxes in corporate loophole. Okay. There's always going to be a loophole in the system that allows you to get out of paying tax. Which is why a flat tax system that required everyone to pay a certain amount, and that there's no sort of loopholes to generate more income for the government, would make both parties more happy because the left would have more social programs.
But the data shows time and time again that when you cut taxes, getting us closer to that flat tax rate, it doesn't spur economic growth, and it doesn't spur increased tax revenue.
I'm sorry, can you read that?
So the data has shown repeatedly that cutting taxes, getting us closer to that flat tax rate, doesn't spur economic growth, and it doesn't increase tax revenue.
But it has shown that.
Where has it shown that?
I mean, like you said, when I asked you to pull up your source, I can't do it right now.
People can look up the Kansas experiment right now. That is a very prime example of. It was Art Laffer. It was literally the guy that started this notion, the Laffer Curve. They brought him in for Kansas's economy, and they did exactly what he advocated for, and tax revenue plummeted.
But it wasn't a flat tax what he advocated for.
He argued, but he made the case that you are, where if you cut taxes, there is an optimal rate that will lead to the most amount of tax revenue. And he said that that's substantially lower than where it currently is.
So you're saying that he advocated for tax cuts, not a flat tax.
So, but you have to make the case as to why this flat tax, which is tax cuts, why that would be any different than the tax cuts that we've already seen.
Because tax cuts would still allow loopholes to get out of paying taxes.
But with just saying we should have a flat tax rate doesn't mean that we're going to close the loopholes.
No, but I'm saying in the system of government that I would want to have put in place with a flat tax system would require so there not be any
But I've
loopholes.
got some bad news, though. The only people in Congress that are advocating for closing those loopholes are people that are advocating for the rich to pay more. People like Bernie Sanders, people like AOC, people like Ilhan Omar.
Well, that kind of goes around because the lobbyists kind of own our government.
Exactly. And
They
so
kind
you
of,
have people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, the people who don't take money from corporations. Sure enough, they're the ones that are actually arguing that these people should be paying more.
but they're also arguing the redistribution of wealth and deciding what people should do with their money.
Sure, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that they are. I think that wealth redistribution is good. Don't you think it's a coincidence that the members of Congress that aren't taking corporate money are the ones that are arguing for the policies that are popular with the majority of people?
It's not majorly popular to raise taxes significantly on the rich.
I still think I would encourage you to look it up after this debate. Raising taxes on the wealthy is incredibly popular.
I mean, I'll definitely take a look into it, but I have taken looks into it, and I've never seen a statistic that's shown that there's a vast majority of Americans that want to tax
Do you think
the
it's a
rich.
majority? Do you think
What?
it's a majority?
I think the last statistic I showed about 52%.
Which was so even if we use the lowest
So,
number, 52%, that would still be the majority.
sure, it would be the majority. That's why I don't believe that would be a fully democratic system. Because people don't know enough about it to have an actual say on it. That's why we're a republic.
A republic and democracy aren't like mutually exclusive. Republic just means that you have like people that represent you in government.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is that we're not a full-on democracy. We don't vote for president based on the amount of votes. We vote based on the electoral college, which means that we're not a full democracy. We're a republic. I think it's generally a good thing.
We don't have to get into the electoral college, but I think that it's a bad thing when the person that gets less votes is the person that becomes president.
I don't think so, because I think that there should